There are people in your life right now who feel safe, familiar, even kind. They don't raise their voices. They don't argue. They may even offer help when you need it most. But what if I told you that some of them are not who they seem? That their charm, their concern, even their emotional support is a mask? Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists in history, spent his entire life studying not just what people show, but what they hide. He warned us that the most dangerous people are not those who openly threaten us, but the ones who blend in, who manipulate gently, who control subtly, and who destroy quietly. And the most terrifying part? They often believe they're doing nothing wrong. In this video, we're going to expose 6 psychological archetypes that Jung believed were among the most dangerous to your peace, your clarity, and your self-worth. They don't wear a warning label. They don't shout. They reflect, they charm, they sympathize, and by the time you realize the harm, it feels too late. But it isn't. This isn't just a list. This is a psychological lens that will change the way you see the people around you, and even more importantly, the way you understand yourself. Because as Jung taught, we don't just encounter these people by accident. We attract what we haven't yet healed. What you're tolerating outside of you is often a reflection of what you're denying within. Now, before we dive deep, I want to ask you something honest. Have you ever had that gut feeling that someone's energy just felt off? That subtle tension after a compliment that didn't feel sincere? That confusion when someone says all the right things but leaves you emotionally drained every time? If so, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not paranoid. You're perceiving something your conscious mind hasn't put words to yet. That's where this video comes in. This is not about judgment. It's about discernment. The kind Jung believed was the foundation of self-protection and personal evolution. If you've ever found yourself giving too much, staying too long, or explaining yourself to people who only ever made you doubt your instincts, then this is your moment to reclaim your awareness. And here's how you can become part of this process. First, comment below with the words, "I choose clarity." If you've ever had to pull yourself away from someone who didn't look dangerous, but felt wrong deep down, that single sentence might help someone else feel seen and validated today. Second, subscribe to the channel. This isn't just content. This is a space for grounded inner work, where we use the wisdom of psychology, depth analysis, and emotional awareness to help you stop being drained by people who wear masks and start building relationships based on truth, balance, and mutual clarity. So take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear is going to challenge what you think safety looks like. It will help you put a name to the subtle violations, the quiet gaslighting, the gentle sabotage you couldn't explain. This isn't fear-mongering. It's psychological awakening. And the truth is, when you begin to see clearly, you can't unsee. You stop asking for permission to protect your peace. You stop making excuses for confusion. You stop mistaking flattery for loyalty and empathy for trustworthiness. You start living in truth. And more importantly, you stop bleeding for people who are not even wounded, just manipulative. Let's begin with the first type, the one Jung described as emotionally seductive yet spiritually manipulative. The one who uses their wounds as a weapon and your empathy as a leash. The one you feel sorry for until you realize you've lost yourself trying to fix them. This is the beginning of seeing the shadow so that it no longer controls you. Carl Jung once said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. That includes building identities that aren't real, adopting behaviors that distort connection, and projecting their inner wounds onto everyone around them. Now, we'll explore the first 3 psychological masks. Jung warned us about archetypes that often appear harmless, even likable, but quietly unravel your sense of stability and self-trust. 1. The chronic victim. This archetype is one of the most deceptive. On the surface, the chronic victim appears fragile, misunderstood, and deeply wronged by the world. They are always dealing with something. Someone betrayed them, someone didn't support them, someone treated them unfairly. At first, you empathize. You care. You want to be the person who finally shows them kindness. But that's where the manipulation begins. Jung believed that many people unconsciously use suffering as a currency. If being a victim earns them love, attention, or leniency, then victimhood becomes a psychological strategy, not a stage, but a lifestyle. These individuals begin to believe that they're exempt from accountability because they've been through so much. The chronic victim never grows. Why? Because growth would mean taking responsibility. It would mean looking in the mirror and admitting that sometimes they play a role in their own chaos. But doing so would rob them of the one thing that gives them power: your sympathy. So instead, they weaponize it. They guilt trip you. They constantly need emotional labor from you. And when you try to set boundaries, they respond with, "After everything I've been through, how could you say that to me?" Suddenly, you're the bad guy. You're the one lacking compassion. The moment you stop carrying them, they accuse you of betrayal. Over time, you start to shrink around them. You hesitate to share your joy or your stability because it makes them feel worse. And worse yet, they subtly make you feel guilty for not being broken. This isn't support. This is emotional parasitism. Jung described these individuals as people who have fused with their shadow. Their victimhood is no longer a reaction to pain. It has become a persona. And the truth is, as long as being broken gets them love, they will never truly want to heal. R. The charming mirror. The second archetype is even more difficult to detect because they feel so good to be around. This is the person who reflects your desires, your values, your dreams right back to you. They laugh at your jokes. They validate your insecurities. They admire your strengths. At first, it feels magical. You feel seen. But slowly, something feels off. You realize you don't really know who they are. They've never disagreed with you. They never challenge you. And when you look closer, you notice they never share anything vulnerable or personal. That's because they're not showing you their real self. They're performing a reflection of yours. Jung called this the persona trap. When a person over-identifies with their social mask, they become disconnected from their inner self. They're not lying, but they're not being real either. Their goal is to be liked, not to be known. The charming mirror doesn't form relationships. They form alliances based on approval. They read what you want, then become it. But the moment your approval fades or you confront them, they disappear or turn cold. Their loyalty isn't to you. It's to their image in your eyes. Over time, this relationship becomes empty, confusing. You might blame yourself. You'll try harder to get them to open up, to go deeper, but you're not dealing with a person. You're dealing with a mask. A mirror designed to maintain access to your attention, your praise, your affection. Trusting someone like this is like building a home on fog. There's no foundation. And by the time the illusion fades, you realize you were never in a relationship. You were in a performance. 3. The passive-aggressive enabler. This one is particularly dangerous because they sound supportive. They use soft tones, polite language, and appear well-meaning. But their words always carry an undertone, a subtle disapproval, a hidden warning. They'll say, "That's ambitious. Just don't get your hopes up." Or, "You're brave to try something like that. I couldn't handle that kind of failure." It sounds like concern. It feels like advice. But it's actually fear dressed as care. Jung understood that the helper can have a shadow too. When someone's identity is built around being the wise, grounded one in the room, your growth threatens that. Your independence challenges their unconscious need to be needed, so they don't attack your dream directly. They weaken your confidence slowly. This person doesn't want to destroy you. But they do want to keep you close, dependent, just uncertain enough to still seek their validation. They're the emotional equivalent of a wet blanket dampening your fire just enough to ensure it never burns brighter than theirs. The damage here is subtle. You internalize their doubts as logic. You start editing your vision to fit their limitations. You question whether your ambition is arrogance, whether your vision is delusion. And by the time you realize what's happened, your wings are clipped and they're still smiling. They'll never say, "Don't grow." Instead, they'll say, "I just want you to be realistic." What they mean is, don't outgrow me. Jung believed that the most dangerous helpers are the ones who unconsciously resent your freedom because it reminds them they're still stuck. When you encounter this type, remember, doubt isn't always wisdom. Concern isn't always care. Sometimes it's projection. And if you're not careful, you'll spend years modifying yourself to make someone else feel secure. Each of these three archetypes operates on a subtle level. They don't shout, they don't threaten, and they rarely admit their motives even to themselves. That's what makes them so difficult to detect and so destructive over time. But the real danger isn't just who they are. It's who you become around them. Around the chronic victim, you become the rescuer until you lose yourself, trying to fix what never wanted healing. Around the charming mirror, you become addicted to your own reflection until you realize you were never really loved, just mirrored. And around the enabler, you become smaller until you forget that your dreams were once vivid and alive. Jung taught that unconscious people don't just wear masks. They pull you into the performance. And the longer you play along, the harder it is to recognize yourself when the curtain finally falls. But this awareness is the beginning of power. Once you name the pattern, you are no longer inside it. In the next part, we'll uncover the final three types Jung warned us about: the competitor who claps for you while secretly resenting you, the spiritual narcissist who uses calmness as control, and the empathic controller who manipulates through emotional overwhelm. These are the ones Jung said are hardest to spot because they often look the most enlightened. But now, your eyes are beginning to adjust to the shadow. And when you can see what others refuse to acknowledge, you become free not just from them, but from the version of you that needed them. Let's continue. The chronic victim, the charming mirror, and the passive-aggressive enabler are subtle, persistent, and emotionally demanding. But the remaining three archetypes are even more deceptive. They appear successful, spiritual, empathic. They carry an air of wisdom, depth, or healing, but underneath, they are hiding something far more controlling. These final three are the most difficult to recognize because their manipulation hides behind your own longing for clarity, connection, or compassion. 4. The secret competitor. They call you friend. They compliment your progress. They smile when you share good news. But deep down, they don't see you as an ally, they see you as a threat. The secret competitor is not fighting the world. They are fighting you. Quietly, constantly. And the closer they are to you, the more dangerous they become. This archetype is born from unresolved inferiority. Jung believed that individuals who feel inadequate but cannot face that feeling will project it outward by comparing themselves, by sabotaging others, by competing through imitation or subtle discrediting. They won't insult you directly. Instead, they'll one-up your stories. They'll redirect attention to themselves. You tell them about a new opportunity, they respond with something even bigger they're working on. You succeed, and they quickly remind you of something you haven't done yet. They may copy your ideas, then subtly claim credit. They may compliment you with conditions. You did great, especially for someone with your background. And when you fail or struggle, they show concern, but it feels hollow, because underneath they are relieved. Not because they hate you, but because your success makes them feel invisible. Jung saw this behavior as a shadow defense mechanism. The secret competitor is not malicious at the surface level, they are afraid of being eclipsed. But because they cannot admit this fear, they cover it with applause. The problem is, the applause is laced with tension, and over time, you begin to sense it. You start questioning whether you're safe to share good news, whether you're too much, whether your shine is making others uncomfortable. In relationships like these, success starts to feel lonely. You begin shrinking not to protect yourself, but to protect the illusion of connection. And when you finally fall, the secret competitor will be the first to say, "I saw it coming." Not because they did, but because they needed it to come. 5. The spiritual narcissist. This is perhaps the most well-camouflaged archetype. The spiritual narcissist doesn't shout. They don't dominate through volume. They dominate through calmness, language, and the illusion of wisdom. They are grounded, polished. They quote philosophers. They speak of healing, mindfulness, trauma, and presence. They seem enlightened, But behind the glow lies an untouched ego, wrapped in robes of spiritual superiority. Jung believed that when a person over-identifies with the spiritual self and refuses to acknowledge their own egoic impulses, the shadow leaks out in subtler, more manipulative ways. The spiritual narcissist appears above conflict. They never get angry. They never react. Instead, they invalidate your emotion through pseudo-wisdom. They'll say, "You're projecting," when you try to confront them, or "This feels like a wound you haven't healed yet," when you express pain. They position themselves as the emotionally advanced one, which means any disagreement becomes proof of your lower consciousness. And because their language is wrapped in kindness, it's hard to call out the power play. The truth is, they don't want connection. They want control, emotional, intellectual, spiritual. They want to be the one who sees more, understands more, and rises above more. They don't offer feedback. They offer spiritual diagnoses. They don't argue. They hold space, which usually means they hold themselves above you while you twist yourself into knots, trying to be more evolved. Jung saw this as the shadow of the healer, the part that never did the real work of confronting the ego. They didn't dissolve it. They simply disguised it. And if you're not grounded, you'll start measuring your worth by how calm, agreeable, or spiritually receptive you are around them. You'll start censoring your humanity to match their mask of divinity. But your humanity isn't a flaw. It's what protects you from manipulation disguised as clarity. The moment you stop trusting your gut because someone quotes Rumi while violating your boundaries, you've lost the very intuition that true spiritual work is meant to amplify. 6. The empathic controller. This one is the hardest to reject because they don't seem dangerous at all. They seem deeply feeling, emotionally tuned in, supportive. They cry with you. They listen. They say things like, "I just feel everything." And for a while, it feels like a gift. You feel seen. You feel understood. You feel connected, until you realize you're no longer yourself. The empathic controller doesn't dominate you through force. They dominate you through sensitivity. You begin adjusting your behavior so you don't overwhelm them. You censor your tone, your emotions, your truth, because they say things like, "That energy really affects me," or "I just can't handle tension like that." And slowly, without noticing, you start parenting them emotionally. Your life becomes about not triggering them. And here's the twist: they never ask for this directly, but they allow it. They expect it. And when you finally break, when you finally speak up, they fall apart. They accuse you of being insensitive. They spiral, and you end up comforting them for how your boundary hurt their feelings. Jung warned that many who claim extreme empathy are often externalizing their internal chaos. Instead of owning and integrating their emotional turmoil, they make it your job to manage. They are not offering connection. They are outsourcing regulation. Over time, your own needs vanish. You become responsible not just for your behavior, but for their reactions to it. And if you push back, they claim emotional harm. But it's not your harm, it's theirs. And they've never learned how to hold it themselves. This isn't empathy. It's emotional coercion, dressed as connection. Jung believed the most dangerous patterns are not the ones we can clearly see, but the ones we mistake for love, healing, or care. And this archetype thrives on that confusion. The empathic controller is not evil, but they are so unconsciously lost in their sensitivity that they build relationships around being protected, not being accountable. And if you stay too long, you'll end up believing their pain is your fault, their chaos your burden, and their fragility your responsibility. But it isn't. It never was. The path forward is clarity. When Jung spoke of the shadow, he didn't speak of monsters. He spoke of blindness. These 6 types are not inherently bad people, but they are people who have never met their shadow, and, as a result, they project it onto you. Their emotional chaos becomes your environment. Their unhealed wounds become your job. Their illusions become your reality. And the longer you stay unaware, the more you'll shape yourself to survive their storms. But now, you've seen behind the masks. The chronic victim, the charming mirror, the passive-aggressive enabler, the secret competitor, The spiritual narcissist, the empathic controller. None of them shout, none of them chase, but all of them drain. The question is not just who they are. The question is, who do you become around them? Because once you answer that, you'll know who needs to go and, more importantly, you'll know who you need to become to make sure they never stay again. In the next part, we'll explore how and why these people are drawn to you. Not because you're weak, but because there's a part of your shadow that still tolerates what you know deep down is misaligned. Let's go deeper. At this point, you've likely seen pieces of your own life reflected in these 6 archetypes. Maybe someone close to you fits the description, maybe multiple people, or maybe, if you're honest enough, parts of you do. That's not a failure. That's the doorway to the deepest kind of transformation, the kind Carl Jung dedicated his life to uncovering. You don't just encounter these people randomly. They are not accidents in your life story. According to Jung, they are mirrors. And if you keep attracting the same emotional pattern, the same types of people who manipulate, drain, or confuse you, it's not punishment, it's a message from your own unconscious. Jung believed the outer world reflects the inner world. And what you tolerate, especially in relationships, often reveals what you've yet to integrate within yourself. This is the central principle of shadow work, the psychological process of discovering the parts of you that you've rejected, denied, or forgotten. These aren't just flaws or wounds. They are powerful instincts, emotions, and truths that you've locked away in order to be accepted. But here's the problem. When you lock away a part of yourself, it doesn't disappear. It waits. And worse, it begins to express itself unconsciously, through projection, through attraction, through silent agreements you don't even realize you're making. You may think you keep meeting manipulative people by bad luck, but Jung would say you're unconsciously drawn to them because there's a part of you that still hasn't reclaimed your right to say no, your right to be direct, your right to walk away. These people don't overpower you with force. They find the unprotected places in your psychopathy gaps where your shadow is still leaking. For example, if you continually attract victims, ask yourself, what part of me still needs to be needed to feel worthy? Why does rescuing someone give me purpose? The answer isn't shame. It's survival. You were taught that being helpful earned love. So now you overextend yourself for those who never intend to grow. If you attract charming mirrors, people who reflect you but never show you who they really are, ask, why do I still seek approval over authenticity? When did I learn that being admired was safer than being known? If enablers surround you, question the part of you that avoids conflict, the part that would rather shrink than make someone else uncomfortable. Why is being agreeable more important than being free? These are not flaws. They are fragments of you pieces formed through childhood survival, past relationships, or cultural programming. But as Jung taught, what you do not make conscious will control you. You will continue to dance with the same energies, feel the same betrayals, fight the same internal battles until you finally stop and look inward. He believed that healing does not begin with changing other people. It begins with reclaiming the parts of you that allowed them to enter. And this is where many people turn away. It is easier to blame the manipulator than to admit you ignored the warning signs. Easier to label the narcissist than to ask why you were drawn to them in the first place. But if you truly want peace, you have to be willing to go deeper than blame. You have to explore the inner agreements you never knew you made. Do you feel guilty when you set boundaries? Do you feel responsible for other people's emotions? Do you second-guess your instincts because they weren't validated in your past? Then the people in your life are not the real problem. They are the symptom. Jung once said, your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. That's the difference between surviving and evolving. When you look inside, you don't just change who you allow in, you change who you are in the presence of others. Because here's the truth. These 6 types, these subtle manipulators, these performers of care, they exist everywhere. You can't eliminate them from the world, but you can become someone they cannot reach. You can stop being the fertile ground where their patterns take root. But to do that, you must become conscious of your own shadow. You must admit the parts of you that still long for validation, the parts that silence themselves for peace, the parts that trade clarity for closeness. When you integrate those parts, when you no longer fear your own anger, your own power, your own truth, then you no longer attract people who feed off your denial. Instead, you begin to attract something very different: clarity, depth, and people who meet you without masks. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you did. And that's the ultimate warning from Jung. Not that these people exist, but that you must become someone who no longer makes room for them, someone who stops giving your energy to what confuses you, someone who trusts discomfort more than charm, someone who honors their own intuition above anyone else's validation. This work is not about paranoia, it's about pattern recognition. And pattern recognition is the beginning of liberation, because once you name a pattern, it loses its power over you. Jung didn't want you to be afraid of others. He wanted you to see clearly, to awaken, to become so grounded in yourself that no emotional manipulator can pull you into their story, that no spiritual narcissist can convince you your truth is a wound, that no fragile empath can make you abandon your boundaries in the name of their sensitivity. This is how you stop attracting them, not by changing them, but by becoming so whole within yourself that you no longer vibrate at the frequency of their games. Your shadow is not your enemy, it is your protector. It holds the instincts you repressed, the wisdom you disowned, the power you were told was dangerous. But reclaiming it doesn't make you cruel, it makes you whole. And when you are whole, the masks fall away. Not because you tore them off, but because they no longer have anything to cling to. In the next section, we'll explore exactly how to do this, how to audit your relationships. Let your shadow speak. Stop over-explaining and begin trusting the signals your body, your gut, and your spirit have been giving you all along. Because now, you're not just aware of who they are. You're starting to remember who you are. Now that you've seen the patterns, the personas, the masks, what next? Awareness is powerful, but it's not enough on its own. You can recognize manipulation, spiritual bypassing, emotional guilt tripping, and still find yourself tangled in the dynamics. That's because recognizing is only the beginning. Liberation requires action. It requires discomfort. It requires you to break the role you've been unconsciously playing in their stories. Carl Jung didn't just map the shadow to reveal other people's toxicity. He did it to help you reclaim the parts of yourself that kept you entangled in it. He believed that the real healing begins not when you understand the other, but when you finally make a different choice, one aligned with your whole self. Not the version of you that needed to be liked, needed to help, or needed to be seen. Here's how you begin the process of liberation, not just from people, but from the unconscious agreements that have kept you available to them. 1. Audit your circle. Start here. Look around at your relationships with brutal honesty, not through the lens of history or loyalty, but through the lens of energy. Ask yourself, who drains me? Who confuses me? Who do I consistently explain myself to? Who do I shrink around? If someone constantly needs context just to treat you with basic respect, they are not confused. They are avoiding responsibility. Jung believed one of the most important psychological acts is conscious withdrawal, not out of hatred or resentment, but out of clarity. You simply stop participating in dynamics that cost you your center. Sometimes the most revolutionary boundary is silence. No dramatic confrontation, no long explanations, just no longer being available for what depletes you. 2. Let your shadow speak. You've been trained to be the good one, the peacemaker, the empath, the understanding one. But that training came at a cost. It often required you to repress the parts of you that could have protected you. Your anger is not your enemy. Your skepticism is not negativity. Your intuition is not rudeness. These are parts of your shadow emotions and instincts you were told to silence to stay lovable. Jung taught that wholeness does not come from denying the shadow, but from integrating it. That means letting yourself be sharp when needed. Letting yourself say no without guilt. Letting yourself question people's intentions instead of defaulting to trust. Every time you override your discomfort to appear kind, you abandon yourself. Let the part of you that senses danger speak. Let the part of you that sees through charm rise. Let the part of you that's tired of carrying people finally put the weight down. Because your peace is not built through performance. It's built through permission to fully exist, fully express, and fully protect your truth. San, stop over-explaining. This is one of the deepest forms of self-betrayal. When you feel the need to explain your boundaries, your tone, your feelings over and over, you're not in a relationship, you're in a negotiation of your worth. The people who deserve your energy won't need long justifications to respect your no. They won't demand emotional footnotes before honoring your clarity. The ones who truly care will feel the integrity in your decisions, even if they don't agree. But the ones who are misaligned, the emotional leeches, the spiritual performers, the quiet saboteurs will always ask for more context, more softness, more proof that you're still good. Why? Because your doubt is their leverage. Jung believed that constantly explaining yourself to unconscious people was a waste of energy. They are not confused. They are committed to misunderstanding you because your clarity threatens the role they play in your life. Liberation means learning to be okay with being misunderstood. To walk away with your truth intact, even when someone tries to paint you as cruel, distant, or unstable. You don't owe closure to people who created confusion. 4. Trust what you felt the first time. This is the hardest and most important step, because deep down, you already knew. The first time they ignored your boundary. The first time their compliment felt off. The first time you hesitated to be fully yourself around them. That wasn't paranoia. That was perception. Your subconscious always notices patterns before your mind can explain them. The body feels the truth before the intellect approves of it. But many of us were taught to override these signals, to be nice, to be forgiving, to give the benefit of the doubt. And what does that create? A life where you continuously doubt your own clarity, where your instincts become muted, where your energy is constantly spent making sense of things you already sensed. Jung taught that the journey toward wholeness involves reclaiming our innate knowing, the animal intelligence, the gut reaction, the silent alarm that something is off. When you feel that now, don't rationalize it. Don't soften it. Don't smother it with logic. Listen to it and act on it. Even if you're wrong, which you won't be, you'll still be practicing a muscle that has been dormant. Your self-trust. Because the real goal is not to avoid all difficult people. That's impossible. The real goal is to become someone so deeply rooted in themselves that no mask can fool you, no manipulation can access you, and no charm can override your clarity. That's what Jung meant by integration. That's what it means to be whole. Not perfect, not invulnerable, but conscious, awake, anchored in your center even when the world around you pulls at your edges. And it starts with choice. The choice to stop tolerating confusion. The choice to stop negotiating your worth. The choice to stop being the easy target for people who thrive on complexity. You are not here to endlessly process someone else's chaos. You are here to live your truth without apology. And the moment you decide to fully inhabit that truth, the right people will feel it, the wrong ones will resist it, and your life finally will begin to align with what is real. By now, you've seen behind the masks. You've recognized the archetypes Carl Jung warned us about, not just as abstract psychological concepts, but as real patterns moving through real people. You've likely felt the chill of familiarity, the flash of memory, the moment when something inside you said, "This was me, this was them, this was real." And now comes the most important part. This isn't just about who they are, it's about who you become once you finally stop making yourself available to what breaks you. Jung didn't teach shadow work to make you more tolerant. He taught it to make you whole. Because when you are whole, you're no longer easy to fool. You're no longer drawn to people who reflect your wounds. You stop seeking validation through dysfunction. You stop calling it love when what you really feel is control wrapped in kindness. You become someone different. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to explain their no, who doesn't need to soften their clarity to make others comfortable, who doesn't stay in situations hoping they'll improve when your body already knows they won't. You stop bargaining with red flags. You stop doubting your instincts because someone with soft words says you're being too sensitive. You stop mistaking emotional labor for loyalty. And in doing so, something radical happens. You stop attracting chaos disguised as connection. You stop feeling drained by relationships that look good on the outside but feel wrong on the inside. The people who used to be able to manipulate you because you needed to be liked, needed to be good, needed to be the healer no longer have a way in. Not because they've changed, but because you have. This is what it means to become unmanipulatable. It doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean shutting down your heart or distrusting everyone. It means becoming so deeply in tune with yourself that you no longer abandon your truth to preserve someone else's comfort. It means valuing your peace over your image. It means choosing your own energy over their approval. It means realizing that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to meet themselves, from dynamics that ask you to dim your light, from roles you never agreed to play. Jung believed that true freedom doesn't come from fixing others. It comes from refusing to participate in patterns that deplete you. That's what this has all been building toward. Because the truth is, not everyone will grow with you. Some people are not learning, they are rehearsing. They've been the same for years, just adapting their language to sound more healed, more conscious, more aligned. But their energy doesn't lie, and now, neither does yours. You are no longer afraid of your own knowing. You are no longer molding yourself into someone palatable for people who can't handle the full truth of who you are. You are no longer confusing silence for peace, tolerance for love, or performance for connection. You have become the person Jung envisioned when he wrote that enlightenment doesn't come from imagining figures of light, but from making the darkness conscious. That is the real work, and it is not for the faint of heart. It requires you to leave behind the old self, the one who played nice, who explained everything, who waited for permission to draw a line. But on the other side of that loss is something much greater. Power, not the kind that dominates others, the kind that cannot be dominated. Not the kind that performs confidence, the kind that rests in clarity. You are not here to be swallowed by the chaos of others. You are here to become the one who walks into the storm and remembers who they are. Not because you're fearless, but because you're no longer pretending to be someone you're not. That is the gift of shadow work. That is the liberation Jung pointed toward. And that is who you are becoming. Whole, awake, and impossible to trick.